The Joe Rogan Experience.
Train by day, Joe Rogan Podcast by night, all day.
Yeah, right.
I often think that this thing made itself.
Yeah.
As bizarre as that sounds.
Well, okay, yes and no, eh? It made itself in some way, but you followed the golden thread of what was meaningful and interesting, you know? And that is a spirit. That's the golden thread that leads you out of the maze, you know? And something, you'll be conducting a podcast and something will grip you. And you think, oh, there's something there. And then maybe if you're awake and aware, then you start doing more of that, you know? And that has a life. So that's what happens in the story of Exodus when Moses encounters the burning bush. Because it's a bush, eh? It's not an oak tree that's 300 feet tall.
Right.
It's just a bush. And so the story goes, Moses is walking along and something catches his eye. He didn't have to go over and look, but it catches his eye and he thinks, what the hell's that? And then he goes over and he starts to pay attention. And the more he pays attention, the more the voice of God manifests itself to him. That's what that story means. Is, you know, so something catches your interest and glimmers, then that's the gold beckoning in the distance. It captures your interest. And then if you pursue that, like it leads you into the depths.
I don't know if we've talked about this before, but what do you think about those scholars in Israel that believe that the burning bush was some sort of a psychedelic experience?
Oh, well, I think we have no idea how psychedelic experience shaped religious presumption.
Have you read Brian Murarescu's
Yeah, absolutely.
work? Yeah.
I interviewed him. Oh, yeah.
Amazing.
I mean, look, we know that the shamanic tradition, which is, God only knows how many tens of thousands of years old. You know, it might be, is it millions of years old? Maybe. You know, human beings have been using fire for 2 million years. It could be really, really old. And the shamanic tradition is definitely a psychedelic tradition. And one of the things Murarescu did was show quite clearly that all of Greek culture was embedded in what looks like a collective psychedelic experience. And so, yeah, I think the evidence, like Mircea Eliade, a great religious scholar, studied shamanism, and he thought that the use of psychedelics was a degeneration of the original tradition, but I don't think that's true at all. I think that the psychedelic tradition is part and parcel of the universal religious heritage of mankind, and like, I don't know what that means. You know, I've talked to people like Robin Carhart Harris, who studies the neurology of psychedelic experience, and he said that what it does is produce something akin to a hyper stress experience. So imagine you're extremely stressed, like your life's in danger. And so you have to open yourself up to the possibility of radically new ideas. Well, a psychedelic substance puts you in that state of mind. And so that can be hellish, because you can collapse into like a catastrophic fight or flight defensive response, and magnified by the hallucinogen, then you're just in hell. But that isn't the only necessary outcome. And so the psychedelic experience definitely mimics something like radical learning. And it also seems to reduce the effect of memory on perception. Because most of what you see in the world is memory. It's just that's why, you know, when you look at a word, printed word, you read the word. You can't not read the word. And that's because you see in the memory. You're not seeing, like when I look at the sign behind you, I'm not lost in the yellow in the details. I see the Joe Rogan experience, right? It's part and parcel of perception. It's all memory. What a psychedelic does in part is remove the inhibition of memory from perception. And that re-immerses you in the complex world and shows you how remarkable and beyond comprehension everything really is. That's real. But the question is what to do with that. You know, Timothy Leary, his doctrine was turn on, tune in, drop out. And that devastated the whole culture, that idea. It's like, well, if we just shed our presuppositions and the whole industrial nightmare, we'd all be freedom-loving hippies wandering around Eden. It's like, no, I wanted to do a line of psychedelic products. Turn on, tune in, grow up. Right. I think that's much funnier, much better.
Yeah, and that's also possible. That's a possible path through this sort of quest for spiritual enlightenment.
Yeah.
And it's not the Timothy Leary thing was, it was dismissed by a lot of other psychedelic pioneers of the time. They saw the flaws.
Oh yeah,
in that thinking.
yeah, definitely. The people who were already experimenting with ideas of proper set,
and also
they knew that back in the early 60s.
Yes, and also the people that had no desire to run a group of like-minded people, which Leary did. He wanted to.
He fell into that hippie culture, that hippie counterculture.
He also, I think, he fell into the cult of personality. He fell into this thing that happens when too many people are paying attention to you.
Yeah.
And you think you have all the answers.
Yeah.
It's very dangerous.
Yeah, especially if you combine that with psychedelic
experience. Yes.
That turns out to be a problem.
Right, and the intoxicating grip of that, the power that you have over these people, which is it's unavoidable. And if you are a guru, air quotes, and you're the person doing that, like how many of them just start cults, and how many of them, it winds up being sexual.
Well, Jung was asked once to comment on psychedelic experience. I think he was asked about what Huxley was doing, and Jung's answer was, beware of unearned wisdom. Right. Very smart.
Very smart.
They're very, very smart.
Yeah. Unearned
wisdom.
Almost all wisdom comes at a price and a long, long road to get to that.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Right. It's not a quick fix. There's no quick fixes. This idea that you're just going to trip balls and figure it all out.
Yeah, and then you've got it. No, that's... No,
and everyone that I know that thinks they've figured it out are the most lost.
Yeah.
They're, especially the ones that are espousing it to other people.
If you're lucky, you can come out of an experience like that knowing that, like Socrates, and Socrates may have learned this from psychedelic experience. Seems quite probable because he participated in the Eleusinian mysteries.
Yes.
He said, I know that I don't know. He was radically open to the revelation of his own ignorance, and certainly psychedelics can provide that. It's like, oh, I see. I don't have a clue.
Yeah, that's the first step. That's the first lesson you learn is you don't know shit. Yeah. And also the overwhelming understanding that this is available, that this experience is available, and it's so alien to modern experience, just an average everyday experience, that this thing is
behind the veil, man.
Yeah, and it's right there. It's so scary for people.
Yeah, well, maybe this time. There are wise people working on that front, like Roland Griffiths, who unfortunately is very sick at the moment. And, he's approached this with a lot more reverence and respect than more casual experimenters like Leary. And maybe this time, God willing, we'll get it right and introduce these strange ancient chemicals back into our culture without blowing the lid right off it.